Everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I am your host today. I'm the advertising manager for HGA. So welcome. We want to thank our sponsor, the Greater Baltimore Weavers Guild. Thank you so much. They have sponsored us before, and we really do appreciate it. They're a very active guild. You ought to go onto their website and learn more about them. And we're so excited that they are supporting us here today for this episode of Textiles and Tea. Thank you, Baltimore. We will have questions, as always, at the end of the show. So please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. It's hard for me to see them in the chat, but we'll get them if they're in the Q&A. But keep the comments coming in Q&A. Those are great. Everybody likes to read those. We are so excited today to have Kelly Walsh. Kelly is a hand weaver living and working in Durham, North Carolina. She worked as a web developer years before deciding to launch her own art career and follow her textile dreams. Now she runs a small business selling her work, usually everyday items like kitchen towels, table runners, scarves. Most recently, she has begun exploring the finer art pieces. She has never come across a weaving or dyeing technique that she didn't want to try and loves taking classes to explore all the different ways to play with fiber. Finding a deep connection in her local weaving and fiber communities is important to Kelly. She's an active member of her local weaving guild. She teaches beginning weaving classes, and she's working to grow her regional fibershed group. Sustainable practices in fiber, color, and community are an important aspect of Kelly's work at all levels. Hey, Kelly.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited you're here.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to start off with the big question. What is your favorite tea?
I do not have a favorite tea. There are too many teas and they're all delicious. I know lots of people say that, but we're just coming out of a heat wave here in Durham. So today I'm drinking my tea iced, but yes.
So how did you get started in fiber, especially with your background in technology? Did you do stuff as a kid? Were you?
That was it exactly. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, maybe, my mother taught me to sew because she grew up sewing and she loved to sew. It was really never an overriding passion or anything as a kid. I enjoyed doing it. I loved making my own Halloween costumes and designing weirder and wilder things. And for most of, high school and college, that's kind of where my fiber love lay, was just as a small hobby, making costumes for myself and friends and having fun. But after college, I actually got a job working for an online fabric printing company. And that's kind of really how it became more, I guess, a part of my everyday life, as I realized that's really where my love lay. And so it was awesome to be able to combine those two aspects of myself, the computer programmer and the person who loved fiber and fabric.
Now, that company you work for, does it happen to be in Raleigh?
Well, yeah, so it was Spoonflower, which I assume many people have heard of. Sadly, they are no longer really located in Durham, North Carolina. They were bought by Shutterfly. Many people don't know this, I guess.
No.
I think 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly. Yes, they have mostly shut down the Durham offices. It's I guess the story of big business these days. We don't have to go too much into that, but.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. It was kind of cool that we had them here in the South. That's wonderful.
It absolutely was. And I think it was a great place to tour if you ever got a chance.
But. So was that your first job out of school, was working for them?
Pretty much. I say my first real job, I had worked in coffee shops and yeah, done stuff like that. But that was the first one that felt like an adult job for me. So.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What's the big leap to go from web designer and then jump into becoming a professional artist? So what would you tell people who are thinking about doing the same thing?
I mean, yeah, it's a lot. Mostly what I would tell people is to just really think about the aspect, when you're working a normal day job, you only have to do the job they hire you to do. Being an artist, you can't just be an artist, right? You have to be your own accountant. You have to be your own web developer. You have to be your own office manager, your own marketing team. You kind of have to take on all of those jobs to run your own business or to just be an artist. And so I think that's kind of hidden from a lot of people. I mean, I didn't actually go to art school, so hopefully art schools prepare you guys for this. Since I came at it sideways, I had to figure out a lot of that on my own. Which, you know, I kind of enjoy those parts of it. It means I'm not doing the same thing every day. I get to still, you know, keep my hands in with web development. It's nice being able to only have to focus on my own website and not, you know, something big that a lot of people really care about. But it's, you know, I have to do my own taxes too. So there's always that darker side, that harder side. Nobody enjoys that. But yeah, so consider all the aspects. And, you know, I hope you have a really good support system too. I like to be transparent. I love being an artist way more than I ever loved working in an office. But I wouldn't be able to do it without my partner. You know, his job really is what still pays the mortgage. So it is what it is. And I like to be honest about that.
Well, I was curious, what was the reaction of those near or maybe not so near to you when you said, I'm giving up this and I'm going to do that?
You know, a lot of definitely some pride, just in, you know, that sounds like a really good adventure. It sounds brave. It sounds fun. A little bit of fear, certainly too, for all the reasons I just said. Do you know how much work it's actually going to be? You know, what happens if, you know, you don't actually make enough money, all of that. I also like to say that, you know, a lot of people probably know that the first computers used punched cards, right, to operate, and so do looms. Those fact, like the guy who invented the first way to use those punch cards for computers actually was inspired by looms. So I also like to say, oh, I'm still a programmer. I just went back a few extra generations of tech, you see. So
Oh, that's great.
that's the one
That's
joke I like
good.
getting in there when people ask, you know, how did that make sense? Oh, I'm still a programmer, so it's fine.
You just have a more beautiful outcome
There you
than you
go.
did
Yeah.
before. I love that. Um, you you weave or you talk a lot about weaving with natural materials, right? So, and you're also involved in the local fiber shed. So what's the attraction of natural fibers? And then I guess I want to throw in there too, you may need to explain to people what is the fiber shed. And here's some of your natural
Yeah.
fiber work. It's gorgeous.
Indeed, thank you. So yeah, I'll start with the concept of a fiber shed,
Okay.
which, if people have heard of a watershed, is very similar in terms of, you know, all of the water in your area, whether that's, you know, comes from rain or stream runoff or groundwater, whatever, that creates a watershed. That's a kind of a defined area you live in as to where that water has come from and where it's used and where it's been. And so I don't know exactly what year this was, but early 2000s, mid 2000s, maybe, a woman in California kind of took that same concept and applied it to fiber. You know, the textile industry is humongous and worldwide, and it's kind of insane how many times all the aspects, you know, of a single item in your t-shirt might literally circle the globe before you actually get to wear that shirt. And so she wanted to look at, okay, what if fiber and textiles were a regional system, you know, and she called that concept a fiber shed in terms of like, is the fiber grown near me? Is it processed near me? You know, is an artist making something out of it near me? And then I get to sew it. Kind of how can I do all of those steps in a local, cohesive way, to just think about sustainability. So that's kind of the concept of a fiber shed. You know, as I said, started in California, but local groups have been popping up all over because the point of a fiber shed is to be so regional specific that a fiber shed in California is going to look very different than a fiber shed here in North Carolina, for example, just in terms of what fiber options we have that are processed near us. So yes, I'm part of the Piedmont, North Carolina fiber shed. It's a really great group. I love working with natural fibers for a lot of different reasons. I think first, I mean, yeah, there's the sustainability aspect. You know, I won't get on my soapbox too long, but microplastics have been found in every organ in the human body. You know, they're killing lots of sea animals. Anything that's made with polyester, microplastics are just a fact. They're a part. You know, you can't get away from that at this point. Natural fibers don't have microplastics. Yay! They're, you know, completely compostable. They're completely natural. So they are typically considered better for the environment. I love how natural fibers feel. I'm a very tactile person. I think all of us who become weavers and textile artists really are, because that's the whole point, right? Textiles are tactile. They're meant to be touched and felt. And for me, just natural fibers feel better. They have a more pleasant hand feel. They're nicer to touch. This sounds really hippy dippy, but I feel like maybe a little bit too. They have more soul, you know. So yeah, I think that's my love of natural fibers, is the way they feel, the way they make me feel, and the way I feel about our environment.
So tell us about these two pieces. Oh, sorry, Mandy. Tell us about these
Yeah.
two pieces that are on the loom here.
Yeah.
One's on the loom.
Yep. A really fun project. I was working with a woman up in New Jersey who was running her own company. I think she's actually closed it now because her life just went in a different direction. And the name is actually totally falling out of my head. There we go, the Conscious Comfort. I was like, it's got to be on that card. But yeah, so this was a partnership with a woman who was running a fully, completely organic, USA-made home goods company. So she wanted to source everything herself with people that she felt confident wouldn't lie to her about its organic provenance or whatever. And it was entirely made within materials that were grown in the United States, which as a textile company is really, really difficult. So I was really honored that she found me, and we worked together to create a couple of different fabrics for her to use in her goods. This one was one of my favorite, this kind of cotton boucle grid. She wanted something that had a whole lot of texture, and so she made, I think, pillow covers and placemats out of it. And I just did the weaving, and I really loved it. It was I really love working with people like that in partnerships where I can kind of have fun finding their vision and just being, being the artist I am. So
Well, probably somebody's going to ask this, but I'm going to ask it first. How do you find people like that? How do you find those unique sources of fiber?
yeah, a lot of Googling, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah. And I guess some word of mouth. There's a couple of places I go back to. There's one company called Organic Cotton Plus, and I think they're located in Texas. A lot of the organic cotton that's grown in the US definitely comes from Texas because the dry heat there, that's what allows it to be more organic. I'm in North Carolina, which is a huge cotton area, but because of our humidity, it's very difficult for it to be organic because of the pesticides they have to use. I think just something that environmentally, we're getting a little bit out of what I know in terms of farming cotton, but that's what I've heard. So like a lot of the organic cotton that's grown in the US comes from Texas. And so Organic Cotton Plus, I think is located in Texas, and they specialize in organic cottons. And then we'll also source, they're not just USA grown, but they have some things that they advertise as USA grown. So that's the yarn I used in that project came from them. A little bit too, I guess, yeah, there's also a company called Made in America Yarns that's been having a lot of fun working with more interesting natural fibers. They've done some work with hemp recently, and I've really enjoyed their yarns. But yeah, so I guess it's a lot of Googling, a lot of just asking around whenever I'm at yarn shows, like, hey, have you heard of, any local cottons that I can buy or whatever. And I think just having that hoarder tendency of wanting to buy all the yarn that I see all the time and then just sit on it for a long time means I've got a lot in my stash that I can always go back to.
see, there's a good reason for stashes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what
No
I
more guilt
think.
about stashes.
No,
it's a good thing.
nope.
Well, I think it's interesting. I want to juxtaposition what we just saw with this next scarf because it shows you've got a wide range of skills. I love this scarf because it glows in the dark, right? Or it reflects light and glows, right?
It reflects light, exactly. So there's a subtle distinction between glows in the dark. Obviously, yes, the bits that are like sparkly reflective there, they are not made of natural materials. So, even though I love that, there's some things that, only human-made materials can really replicate. And this scarf shows off those to their best ability as well. So yeah, the little tiny sparkles you say, those strips are actually woven in, there's the same material they use on like safety vests or even like road signs, like when your headlights hit it and it seems to glow, right? That's actually made by bonding like tiny, tiny, tiny microscopic glass beads to a plastic backing. And so those beads are somehow, again, totally science outside of my field, but somehow, throw direct light back at the viewer, basically. So yeah, when I'm taking photos of my piece with camera flash, or, I was marketing these scarves towards like runners, nighttime runners and dog walkers, basically. Like, in the winter, every little bit of, reflectivity helps you be seen if you're on the road at night. So they're a lot of fun to make. It's definitely, it was an interesting kind of process to figure out how to make it work, because obviously the little reflective strips, they don't shrink, right? Like actual yarn does. So it was always a little bit interesting, that moment taking them out of the wash to figure out how can I like smooth everything out to make it wearable and pleasant to actually touch, because they also don't feel very nice. So what's the ratio of like the most reflectivity I can get while still having it feel nice against your skin was kind of a fun project with these.
It sounds like a great workshop.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, you can find it. I think it's called Retro Glow, is the product that's called. So I think those are still available for sale. I haven't actually done a reflective scarf in a while.
Well, I just love them.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I
they
also
look
like
really
it that
cool.
you're flexible. It's not like you're saying, I'm only going to do natural. You're willing to look at, a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. Like I said, any fiber technique or, anything I love to do. So
Well, the next image that we just saw is amazing because you designed the dress, you dyed the yarn, you wove the yarn, and you sewed it in this gorgeous wedding gown.
thank
So what was the most daunting thing about this whole process?
Well, yeah, so I'll go ahead and say I dyed the fabric for the skirt, but the skirt is actually made of commercial fabric. I wove the fabric for the bodice, the top. So even in that image, you can see, the amount of fabric I chose to weave versus just buy, I was playing to my own strengths there. So yes, but it was a lot of fun. I loved doing it. What was the most daunting aspect? I mean, to be perfectly honest, I really enjoyed this. I used to say that, it's actually what kept me sane during planning the wedding. Every time I called another caterer and they didn't pick up the phone and they never returned my calls, or anytime, the schedule slipped or I was trying to do some other project planning thing, I'd just go into my studio and play with the yarn and the dye for a while. And that made me sane again. And it made me want to keep having a wedding. Because wedding planning was it was not fun for me. I know there are some people who enjoy it. But yeah, so I think maybe the most daunting aspect was that like there was a hard deadline, right? When I had to have the dress done by. I'm someone that likes to keep fiddling with things forever and keep changing it, And so I knew in my head that like it had to actually be done and wearable on that specific day. I couldn't change my mind. I couldn't keep playing with it, past a certain point. I just had to say, it's done, let it be. But I love the way it turned out. So I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Well, let me say that there's an article in Handwoven magazine about this dress, right?
Yes.
What issue is it? Do you remember?
It was September, October for 2022, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if y'all want to see more about that, go check that out. And so I'm curious, you were talking about, fiddling with it and everything. So did you design it out ahead of time, or did you kind of, as you made it, you did more with it?
So I knew the general direction I wanted to go with it. The dress is overall, it's inspired by the work of a woman named Leanne Marshall, who does very similar dresses and styles and things. And hers all had that same kind of floaty characteristic, like, and the soft watercolor like dyes. And so I was really inspired by her work and wanted something similar like that. So I knew that it would have a big floaty skirt, and that would be the dyed part. And I knew that, it would probably just, my proportions would have a fairly tiny top, and that also gave me less to weave. But other than that kind of just general simple shape and color palette, I didn't really know what I was going for. I definitely tried a whole bunch of different dye brands and dye systems and ways of dyeing scraps of fabric first before I found the one that had the kind of multicolor effect I liked. So that was probably the part I spent the longest fiddling with, was just trying to see how I wanted to dye the fabric and with what colors and what shapes in that. So I think, yeah, that definitely took the most time and was the most unpredictable part for me.
So did you dye the fabric and the yarn?
Nope, just the fabric. So yeah.
Oh, well, I can't tell. It looks in the photograph that the yarn matches. Is the yarn the same color?
I guess the yarn is the
I mean,
same.
the bodice, is it
Yeah,
the
the
same
bodice
color?
is just like kind of a basic ivory. It was, natural undyed silk. So yeah, yep. Which yeah, I think worked pretty well with the silk fabric I got for the skirt. Yeah, I was able to match that undyed pretty well. And so yeah, the dye is just in the skirt, the fabric. But yeah, I actually ended up just using RIT dye. I tried a whole lot of like really expensive like silk paints at first, and like I wasn't getting the effect I wanted. And so finally, you know, I had some like old bottles of RIT from like ancient projects, and I was just like, let's see what happens with this. And lo and behold, it actually got the effect I wanted, which I thought was very funny at the time. I was, yeah, really trying to use all the right, you know, the most expensive dyes to get, yeah, but no, it was this the grocery store dye that actually did the job I wanted. So,
Oh, that's so funny. That's
yeah.
well, what would you do differently if you did it again?
Honestly, I'm not sure there's anything I'd change about it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I guess I'm not a person that looks back a whole lot. You know, I love how it ended up. It was super comfortable to wear. It was done on time. You know, anything I change might change those two facts about it, and those were kind of the two most important. So yeah, yep.
Well, I think I read, correct me if I'm wrong, that you said, you know, you really love doing it, but you'd never make a wedding dress for anybody else, so don't ask, kind of.
Absolutely, that is true. You know, if anybody out there wants a wedding dress, if you find someone to sew it for you, I would love to help you, you know, design it. I'd love to weave and or dye the fabric. But I gotta say, you know, as much as sewing was my first fiber love, it's not what I would ever choose to do for money. I like weaving for money, you know, dyeing for money. Sewing, nope, I have to cut that off. I'm done. I'm good. Never gonna do another wedding dress.
Why is sewing? I'm surprised you would say that weaving you can do it for money, but you can't sewing. What's the difference for you?
I honestly am not sure. It's just one feels a lot more fun and flexible, I guess. It may be just that sewing clothing is very difficult, you know, fitting different body types.
Um,
Yeah, there's so much involved in getting something to fit even just myself. And I feel like I can do it for me because I have my own body here as a reference. I can try, you know, take it off and put it on and take it off and put it on and take it off and put it on 6,000 times to get it to fit the way that I know I want.
mhm.
But for other people, I think that's I don't know. I just find that much more difficult and not fun. I guess maybe it's stressful, you know, especially the stress of doing someone else's wedding dress that they have so much built up in and is so important. I think that yeah, the stress would take away the joy for me. So,
Yeah, I think that would be a little scary. You can't go exactly, oh, it's good enough. No,
yeah, exactly.
no.
For me, for my dress, I could absolutely go, it's good enough. Like, you know, the back is in very few photos. I like the back. There is one button that's slightly crooked, which most people will never ever notice. But you know, I see it, I know. I don't really care because it's my dress. It was fine that it was crooked on the day of. But if I saw somebody else's dress that I made and the button was crooked, I'd be like, no.
I love that. Well, it's interesting you talk about making a dress and that you like the weaving, but you don't really want to do the sewing part. And because my next question would have been, why does utilitarian weaving appeal to you? Like hand
Mhm.
towels and, you know, here we go, things like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's part of it is just that I don't enjoy sewing clothing very often or for anyone else. So part of it is, you know, these are things that, you know, towels require just a little bit of simple hemming. Though I confess, I also pay a friend to hem my towels at this point because I hate it and she loves it. So I'm gonna let
That's
her do it.
brilliant. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. I
Oh
hate
yeah.
that.
Don't do the bits you don't enjoy. Like I always say, you know, like I joke, like as artists, we're not paid enough to do things we don't enjoy. So if I can pay someone else to hem my towels and then we both win, that's great. But yeah, so part of it is that these are things that need less sewing. I think there's also though absolutely a part of me that really enjoys, you know, a wedding dress. I wore it once. It's still in my closet. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it, but like my kitchen towels, I use those every day. Like, you know, that wedding dress brought me a whole lot of joy on you know, the day I wore it. And the photos bring me joy every day. I'm glad I did it. But there is something very nice about being able to use something every day or have it be a regular part of your life, not just saved for special occasions, you know, something you touch and you hold and you use. I love that. And I think that's kind of at the heart of so much of, you know, textiles. I think I also really enjoy, you know, people are like, oh, this kitchen towel is so beautiful. I'd never use it in my kitchen. Like I'm an absolute slob in my kitchen. I use my towels, I get them stained, they wash, they come out. Like I think I get also just that visceral joy from taking something I put hours of handmade love into and spilling mustard on it. Like maybe I'm just, a little bit contrary in that way. So
Yeah, usually you hear the other way around of I could never use them. If I ruined it, I'd feel so bad. Good for you. Good for you.
thank you. Everybody out there, go use your towels. They'll bring you so much joy.
To me, they're like a memory, either
Yeah.
because I made it or someone gave it to me, or it's like you having a memory book while you're cooking.
Exactly. Yep. And even, that weird stain in the corner, that's a memory of probably a meal you cooked that you really enjoyed. So,
Well, we're going to shift a little bit here because I'm really curious about you were working on the masters from the Olds College, right?
mhm.
So the COE, all of them, they take a lot of work and some dedication to do this. So I'm always curious when I'm talking to people, what was the need for you to do that? Why did you choose to do that?
Absolutely. Well, so I'll also confess, I started that program before the pandemic, and I haven't been able to pick it up since then. So, I wasn't able to finish it. But that doesn't really change the reasons why I started it. Part of it, I think, was at the time, I was leaving my normal stable job and going in to do something scary. And this felt, doing that Olds College program, it felt some level of justifying, I guess, what I wanted to do, like saying like this is important too. I'm not just going to, be at home putting around, right? Like there's a certification. There are people who acknowledge that this is a skill worth having. And like, a certificate in that is saying, I worked towards that skill. It was, so like part of it was, I think, yeah, kind of justifying to myself what I was doing, the importance of it. I think part of it too was also just to give me a little bit of a roadmap. I'd come from college to having a normal job, like a very traditional like life moment there, and having something be so open-ended, this gave me a goal to achieve, which
Mhm.
is also really important. All of us are kind of always looking for, yeah, what is my next step? How, and this was a very nice, like you do this and then this and then this and then this, and then hey, you're a master weaver. And it's like, oh, well, okay. Um, Yep. I definitely selected the Olds College program because, as opposed to the HGA, just Certificate of Excellence, I liked that, I can definitely get a little bit distracted. I have a hard time, holding myself to deadlines. And so, a program where there's, 1 week with a teacher where we do a lot of stuff. And then, I have up to a year to like ship, your homework, they called it, a whole bunch of homework. And then I repeat that cycle. I felt like that would hold me more to actually finishing,
Mhm.
than just some kind of nebulous like, oh, I have to do a whole bunch of samples on my own and then ship them off blind and you tell me yay or nay with like no back and forth feedback or no understanding of what the expectations are. That definitely scared me a little bit with the way, yeah, the HGA Certificate of Excellence was done. So that's why I chose the Olds College way. I'm not sure if they're even doing the program anymore. They used to have teachers come down to North Carolina to teach it, and around the US, I think, but I don't think they're doing that anymore. But I do know that there are a couple of other schools and programs who have kind of developed something similar.
Mhm.
So close to me, there's the Yadkin Valley Fiber Center, and I think they've started their own Master Weaver program that's very similar. It takes multiple years, but like they do through the steps. And then I think one of my weaving friends was telling me they were doing something similar up in the Northeast, but I don't remember the details of that exactly. So there's programs out there, and I know the HGA is kind of actually working to change the Certificate of Excellence right now. So I'm really excited to see what'll come from that. And maybe I'll, step back into that. Maybe it'll feel more doable now.
I like it because it's like an investment in yourself when you
Yeah,
do
that's a
something
really
like
great
that.
way of
Yeah.
putting that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I have had people ask me like, so what does like, having a certificate get you? And I'm like, I don't know, pride, brownie points. Like you get to call me Master Weaver. Come on, that seems worth it.
That's right. That's right. Well, this next piece, which is interesting because we've talked about how you like the utilitarian more. This is actually a gorgeous jacket. I just saw it and fell in love with it, so I wanted you to talk about it. So you wove the cloth and you sewed the
Mhm.
jacket. So
Absolutely.
I'm curious about when you weave length and then you're going to sew it. How do you cut into it? I mean, I just think that would be the scariest thing in the whole wide world. And I know you teach it to others. I
Yeah.
mean, do you have to like stand there and hold their hand while they're cutting? You'd have to hold mine. I'd be terrified.
Sometimes everybody comes at it with kind of a different level of fear. You know, after you've done it a few times, I think that helps. You know, we should all have more faith in what we've woven, especially after you've wet finished it. You know, it is cloth at that point. It's not just going to fall apart. I promise you. Like commercial cloth frays too, like fraying, it's not that big a deal. And there are steps you can take to minimize it. So I encourage everyone to, you know, make stuff out of what you've woven, cut it. It's okay. It's not going to fall apart. I think definitely, you know, those years at Spoonflower probably also helped a lot because I was surrounded by so much fabric, like so much fabric that it became less important. There were scraps of it everywhere. It was just one of those things, you know, like how can you use this? What can you do with it? You know, it was always kind of there and available. So it didn't become something I would ruin anymore. It became just another resource. And I think that helped a lot. You know, once I've woven the fabric, obviously there is a lot more put into it than anything you just buy or, you know, pull out of a scrap bin. But I think it was also just that fact of like, once you've woven the fabric, you have to do something with it. Otherwise, it's just going to sit on a shelf forever. And like that, you know, kind of in the same way, if you put your towels away and only use them on nice days, right? That's not a piece that's alive. That's a piece that's in stasis. So I want my fabric to live its best life, and sitting on a shelf is not that, but being something that I get to wear and use, you know, that's fulfilling the fabric's life goals, or that's what I tell myself at least. So I love this jacket. This is what I wear around my studio in the cold winter months. It's got humongous pockets, like you can see there, so I can just load it up with stuff. Yeah, it's the perfect kind of light weather jacket for cold days. Yeah.
What is the cloth? What did you
Yeah,
use?
so that's out of cotton actually. Well, so that's right. That piece actually uses the color grown cotton. I don't know if
Okay.
many people here have heard of Sally Fox or Fox Fiber. But so one of the looms I purchased, the woman was kind enough to give me like a huge cone of like the color grown cotton. And I'd heard of it, but never worked with it before. And, you know, she was getting rid of everything. So of course I took the yarn with me because, you know, it's yarn. And so it was sitting around for a while and I wanted to do something special with it. And so I was like, okay, well, I've been wanting to do some yardage, you know, for some kind of jacket. How about I use this stuff? And so yeah, I combined the color grown cotton with just undyed natural organic cotton. And yeah, it's a squishy fabric. It's not quite a waffle weave, but it's one that definitely does a little bit of that puckering to give it some kind of thickness, and I don't know, squishiness is the best way I can describe that. So it was perfect.
How did you decide that was the structure you were going to do? Did you sample a lot? I mean,
No, I'm really bad actually. New weavers don't do what I do. I sample almost nothing, I confess. I pretty much, I come up with an idea, I dive in. If it doesn't quite work, you know, I'm more likely to just switch what I'm doing instead of try to change the set or something like that. You know, I'll look up what other drafts I can get out of that same threading, and just change my treadling, you know. So I was lucky. I think this one did work, you know, just right out of the box. It was a pretty simple, you know, twillish structure. It was in the classic 8-shaft book that everyone's got, Carol Strickler. So it's one of the ones in there. And yeah, I guess I got lucky with that. But no, I don't do a lot of sampling. I kind of just guess. And I didn't even have the jacket pattern picked out when I wove the fabric. You know, I wove the fabric first, and then, you know, a few weeks or months later, you know, I saw this jacket pattern and I was like, hey, I think that'd work for this project. So yeah.
well, I see we've got a question on that one already. What jacket pattern is it? Can people still find it?
Oh, that's a good question. They should be able to. I'll see if I can remember. Yeah, yep.
Now, there's an article about this jacket, you making it, right? Did I read that?
I think there's a blog post on my website maybe about
That's
it.
what it was.
But
All
yeah,
right.
it hasn't been officially published or anything. So yes,
Um,
it's got to be on my website. I feel like it's by the Wixton company, which may no longer be selling their patterns actually.
oh,
There's got to be other similar ones out there, and I might be wrong. So yes, check my website. That'll give you the details.
all right. Sounds good. Um, So you learned to sew as a kid, right? Was this one of those things of your mom saying, you need to learn how to do this? Or was it, I want to learn how to do this, Mom. I want to learn how
It
to
was
do this.
absolutely me going, I want to learn how to do this. Yeah. I believe she sewed a lot of her own clothes growing up. And so she did a couple of fun projects for me, but like the sewing machine was like, ooh, that's a cool thing. Like, how do I use that? And so, yeah, she started me, I think, with some hand sewing projects. I had like a little, I remember, I think the first thing I ever did was learn how to quilt technically,
Oh,
which is funny.
really?
I'm not a big fan of quilting now, but I think it was a good, hand project for kids to start with, is I just made a little quilted pot holder, just 4 little squares. And that taught me kind of the concepts of right sides together, and all of that, and needle and thread. And then, yeah, so that's where it started. But yeah, it wasn't forced. It was absolutely only if I wanted to, kind of thing. Yep.
What do you think the younger you would have, if you could go back and say, hey, you're going to be doing this for a living someday? What do you think the younger you would have said?
Yeah, no, probably laughed a whole lot. As a kid, I wanted to be a lot of different things, everything from ballerina to astronaut, so yeah, at the time I was really good at science and math skills. And so those were things that definitely I was told, oh, there'll be better jobs. And, like, especially as a girl, it was very cool that I was good at those things. So it was kind of easy to follow that very automatic path for a long time. And I think probably I thought I would still be on that path because like those are things I still enjoy, but I definitely didn't imagine myself as an artist. Yeah, through all the random things I thought I'd do, artist honestly wasn't one of them. So,
Well, I think I saw where you said that making fiber is the intersection of technology with art and math with color. Would you say more about that?
I mean, yeah, so it's, I mean, yeah, so weaving, I think to begin with, I'm not a historian, but I think there's arguments out there for it being considered the first technology, right? Looms were one of the first complex, machineries created to run an industry. Looms go back like Bronze Age and older. And, all the way through like the industrial era, that's all about looms and weaving, and like mass manufacturing is all about weaving too. So for me, the concepts of like weaving and technology are intertwined in a way that you cannot really separate them. I think that's a really fun idea that I just like playing with in my brain. We feel like hand weaving is old and it's kind of out of fashion, but like weaving is, I'm losing my words now, but yeah. Weaving in lots of ways too is straight binary. A thread is either visible or it isn't. And so I think those kind of concepts just roll around in my brain and pick up other ideas in a fun way. There's a lot of people out there who have fun like weaving in Morse code because, dots and dashes are also just kind of another form of binary, and codes you can, put into your weaving are really cool. It's all part of kind of technology. And yeah, mesh together in that way. And then as weavers, we also know that color is incredibly complex, right? It's not just about the color wheel. It's not just about, opposites and all of that. Color itself is a very, it doesn't require math to understand color, but there's kind of math embedded in that. There's science embedded in why color works and what colors work together. And so all of those, you just kind of throw all those kind of fun concepts of like fiber arts and math and science and color in a pot and stir them up. And I, like figure out what comes out today. Is kind of how I think about those. So yeah.
Yeah, that should be the prerequisite to computer science. You have to learn to weave first.
Absolutely. You know
When
what?
you get that, you're going to
Yeah.
understand the rest of it.
Absolutely. Like either that or, like after year 1 of programming, go take a weaving class and come back to programming and see how it changes how you program, or changes how you think about what you're creating and how it all kind of has to work together as a whole. I'm a big fan of that. I also think though that people should take a physics for driving class. So, I'm all here for like science should be in every part of our lives.
That's right. They're all connected. Yeah.
They're all connected. You cannot get away from it. Yeah.
Well, what's next for you?
Oh, so many things. I think, yeah, yep. What's next this week? We have a really cool show that happens here every 4th of July. So I've had a lot of fun preparing for Fest. We all go out to a state park and there's music and crafts and everything. So I'm looking forward to that this week. Um, but what's next for me long term? I've had a lot more fun teaching in the last year or so, and so I've kind of been ramping up my teaching. I find rigid heddle is really fun to teach to people who are afraid of more complicated big floor limbs. And it's a really fun way for people to just start expressing creativity in a way. So many people I teach are like, oh, but I can't draw. I'm not creative. And I'm like, I can't draw either. That's a totally different skill. Totally different skill. So maybe just try weaving and have fun with that. So I'm expanding my rigid heddle classes. But I also just got back from spending 2 months at Pentland, which was a really incredible experience. And so
Oh,
I'm
how
just
wonderful.
waiting to see, yeah, exactly how that changes what I want to make next. And yeah, how I find that impacting because yeah, I think that was a really formative experience that made me reflect on like, I have had this focus on, yeah, making utilitarian objects that can be used. And that was questioned a little bit at Penland in a fun way. And so I want to see what I make next just based on that. Yeah.
Now, was that like an internship or was it just you being a student for 2 wonderful months?
It was just me being a student for two
Oh,
months. Yeah, exactly. So it's what they call their spring concentration. So yeah, I was there as a work study. So I got a scholarship to be there. I was literally washing dishes to
I can
help
wash
a lot of
dishes.
my
I would wash
exactly.
dishes for that.
Yeah. Well, so I recommend everyone apply for their work study program. It was a lot. It was very intense, but it was absolutely worth it. It was a lot of fun. I was learning under Andrea Donnelly, who's a really incredible weaver. And yeah, it was just 2 months I think also just 2 months to focus on what I wanted to make with no pressure to make sure that something had to sell, no pressure to use my time, efficiently, or any of those things that also come from trying to be an artist who sells your work. It was just 2 months to see what I could make.
Mhm.
And what could I make that meant something to me? And so it was really, really lovely.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we got some questions. Shall we go
Yeah.
take some questions?
Let's do it.
All right. Um, this is from Jean Young. She says, I live in the metro Atlanta area. How can I learn more about the fiber shed in my area? That's a very good question, Jean. I don't know that there is one.
Yeah, I don't know either. I feel like there ought to be. So I do know that if you go to, I think probably there's like a main fibershed.org website. And I think it probably has a list of all of the fiber sheds because once you create your own fiber shed, you let the kind of mother fiber shed know you exist. And I'm sure that they have a directory that lists all your local ones. Atlanta's not too far from Durham, and we draw kind of a big circle for us because the Piedmont is kind of an interesting range. So, anytime you want to come a little bit north, the Piedmont Fiber Shed would love to have you if you just want to learn about it. And if there's not one in your area, you can talk to us about creating your own.
There you go, Jean. New
Yeah.
project for you. What's the name of the reflective yarn you mentioned? That's from Katie Clements.
Yes, Retro Glow. So retro and then GLO, I think is what it's called. Like I said, it's been a couple of years since I've played with it, but it was sold by 3M. And I think actually Red Heart Yarn, who I know we think of as like, the Walmart yarn, but they had actually a glowing yarn that they were also selling that was made from the same stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
Time to Google. See if you
Yep.
can find it. This is from Kathy Wilcox. I love weaving utilitarian items for gifts and myself as well. What is the first item you ever wove and what got you hooked on weaving? Good question, Kathy.
Good question. Yeah. So the first item I ever wove was a scarf. I was taking the weaving class on a complete whim. Yeah, I had some vacation hours that I was going to use or lose, that kind of situation. I was like, I don't know, I'll just go learn to weave. I like fabric. And so yeah, that teacher had us design and weave our own scarf. And I love it. I still have that scarf and I wear it today. So
Where was it? Where did you take it?
it was out of the Sawtooth School in Winston-Salem. Yep.
Oh, cool.
So yeah.
This is from Terry Shoemaker. Terry already asked. We asked about the jacket, and we asked about that jacket. Oh, Jean says, disregard my question, as I see that the fibershed.org has a lovely directory. Way to go, Jean. Thanks for telling us that.
I'm so glad I was right. It would have been really embarrassing if I'd been wrong about that. So thanks, Jean.
Bonnie wants to know, would you talk more about the fine art projects mentioned in your introduction?
Yeah, so let's see. The most recent thing that I wove that I was really proud of, there's the slide with the window weaving. So that's, I guess, yeah, that was the final project I made for Penland, and I loved it. I did actually a previous kind of smaller one that was still a window, kind of just playing with that idea of the shadows that windows leave, you know, like, yeah, like light shining through a window and then kind of reflecting on the wall, how that kind of angles and changes, you know, the effect. And so I had a surprising amount of fun just kind of playing with that idea and with kind of those stretched out shapes. This piece in particular, I really love because Andrea Donnelly was teaching us her technique. This is also going to blow everyone's minds, and we could have spent a whole hour talking about it. But what she does is she actually weaves the fabric, and then she paints on it, and then she unweaves it and reweaves it again.
Really?
Yes, exactly. Really. So
Oh,
I used her technique with this piece, and that's kind of what made all of the lines a little bit feathery and not quite match up, because I'm literally trying to place the warp or in the weft where it was before in the warp to get those shapes to line up. And they'll never line up perfectly. And that's kind of part of the fun of the process. And I feel like that translated really well to kind of mimicking shadows, and how shadows, you know, always feel that kind of disjointed and stretched kind of perspective that they give us. So yeah, I really, really loved this piece, and I will definitely be doing more things like that. Just as kind of, I mean, yeah, so maybe this is why I didn't go to art school, but I'm like, I don't know, as things to put on the wall, like that just feels so useless and not real, but like I want to do it more and kind of explore that. So yeah.
this is gorgeous.
Thank you.
What did you dye it with?
Yeah, so that's actually it was literally just paint, so it's screen printing ink that we
Oh, ink.
did
Okay.
onto, yeah. So yeah, I should do a blog post about this piece alone and show like the in-process photos, because it's really cool. It was literally, yeah, woven with just white on white yarn. So the very first step is I just wove white on white, and it's done in 3 panels. You can kind of see, you know, the lengths don't match up. So each panel was, yeah, just
Oh,
white
I
on
see.
white plain yarn. I pulled it off the loom. It's, you know, the warp is still connected in the back, but the fabric I pulled out on a table, and then painted my shapes on it, and then unwove it, keeping track of like where the weft lined up, and then wound the warp back onto the loom now that it, you know, parts of it have been painted, and then rewove it with the original weft. Yeah. It's
Oh
hard
my
to
gosh, we could do an hour on that, just talking
Yeah,
about your
exactly.
experience.
I mean, again, it was 2 months learning how to do this, and it was well worth it.
Really?
I mean, it was other topics as well. We didn't spend
Yeah.
2 months on just this, but yeah, this is the main thing that I feel like she taught us at Penland. So
I don't know if I have the patience for that. Um, oh, here's a good question. This is from Karen LeBlanc. Karen's asked, can you talk about your perception of the difference between a weaver, an artist, and or a fiber artist?
oh man, yeah. I mean, there's so much baked into these concepts of art versus craft, right? And all of that. I try to use them all almost interchangeably. I call myself a weaver. I call myself an artist. I call myself a craftsperson, a maker, a small business. All of those words have different intonation, but I want to embody all of them simultaneously a lot. Um, I think that weavers should call themselves artists more often than they do. I think it is a skill that you have spent years learning. You are, you know, each thing you make is unique. Even if you are mimicking a pattern you got from Handwoven magazine, or from a historical book, even if you didn't create your own draft, you are still making something unique and beautiful. You are putting yourself into it, and you should call it art. That's how I feel about it. So yeah. You are an artist. You know, when I call myself a fiber artist, it's really just telling people the medium that I mostly work in. I don't want to mean it's any less of an art form. It's just like, I'm not a painter, I'm an artist, I'm a fiber artist. But yeah, I think there's a lot built up in all of those words in each of our minds, and we're all using them slightly differently. So pick which one you want to be and just call yourself that.
I like that. We got a couple of people asking about the things hanging up behind you.
Oh yeah, yep. So these were just other examples of things I've actual garments. You know, I talked about like I don't like to sew clothes. These are a few I've done for myself. But yeah, I'll never do a lot of clothes. And in fact, this one wasn't actually sewn by me. The yellow and gray checked shirt was another partnership with a local fashion company. And so we partnered together. I worked to create the fabric, which then she sewed into shirts and sold. And so that was kind of just another expression of the fiber shed. You know, how narrow, how close to home can you make the clothes you're wearing? You know, that idea of farm to table, we understand that. If you go to a fancy restaurant, farm to table makes sense. But for clothing, we haven't kind of applied the same rules. How can I make what I wear, you know, travel the least possible distance to get to me? And so then, yeah, the green one is just a dress I made for myself, kind of as proof of concept. You know, it's been really difficult to find people to be like, no, I can weave the fabric that you make your clothes out of. See, here's what I did for myself. You know, there's a lot of sewists in the area that like sewing their own clothes, but how do I convince them to buy my fabric to do that? You know, it's kind of just an example piece for that. But it's one of my favorite dresses now. So
Oh, good. Somebody else was asking, have you come across a weave structure that you really liked, that really intrigues you, but you'll probably never get a chance to do?
oh man. I've done one double weave project in my life. You know, true double weave, like with, you know, multiple layers that I was stuffing stuff in the pockets. And that was a lot of fun and really cool. It might be a while before I ever go back to that. You know, I had fun with I'm forgetting her last name. Deflected double weave, Natalie
Drummond.
Thank you, Natalie Drummond. I took her class and I love deflected double weave because it was like playing with the ideas of double weave, but without the layer of like actually having to thread your loom twice, basically, and weave twice as much. But yeah, so double weave, a lot of fun. My loom neighbor at Penland, she focused almost entirely on double weave. It was incredible to see the things. I mean, she was even doing triple weave. She's one of those people who just will probably never weave a single layer of cloth in her life. And I'm like, one's fine with me. I'm good. I'm good. She's there doing it for the rest of us.
Yeah, there's some things it's like, okay, I'm glad I've done that. I'm never doing it again. But I'm glad I've done that.
Exactly.
Well, we've had such a good time today. Thank you so much for being on here. I really do appreciate you coming on being on the show.
Greatly enjoyed it myself. It was lovely chatting with you, and with all of you people listening. Thank you so much.
I look forward to seeing more of your work and what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, go to her website and read some of her blogs. They're interesting, and it gives you more insight into what she's done, things she's been through, and when she's working on some of these projects. So check out her website. It's kellywovit.com, and I think you'll get a kick out of that. So, and we want to thank our sponsor today. Again, it's the Greater Baltimore Weaving Guild. We appreciate them sponsoring our the Weavers Guild of Greater Baltimore. Sorry, guys. We appreciate you sponsoring this episode today. And again, go check them out. They do some amazing stuff up there in Baltimore. So thank you guys so much for being a sponsor. If you are interested in being a sponsor, whether it's you or your business or your guild, a group of you want to get together, please do so. You can go onto the website at weavespindye.org and you can purchase a sponsorship there. If you have questions, you can give us a call. We'd be glad to answer any questions for you. But thank you, Greater Baltimore, for being our sponsor today. Convergence is coming. Convergence is coming. Hard to believe, but it is a week from today. We will be leaving for Convergence. And some of you will already be out there for Complex Weavers. But if you haven't completely filled in your schedule, you can still buy some classes. Now, the workshops are closed because the teachers need to get ready for a 3-day or 1-day workshop with all their equipment and everything. But you can still sign up for a seminar. You can sign up for the 90-minute or the 3-hour. So check that out. The tours are still open. So there's a lot of things that you can still sign up for. But you know what's really cool this year? We've got something brand new and we're very excited about it. We've got an app for Convergence. So everything you need to know will be in that app. Your schedule will be on there. You will be able to find your classes, where the classes are located. We're going to have the floor plans of both the hotel, the convention center, and the vendor hall. You know where the vendors are and who's going to be there. You can check your schedule, like I said. You can also log in and do a profile. You can send messages to each other, and then we will get information out to you also. If there's a change in the room for some reason, or something else is going on that we feel like everybody needs to know, or maybe just people in your class need to know, we can get a message to you through that app. You can download it's called Cvent. You can download the Cvent app. You can either do it through, if you have a Google base, or if you can do it at Google Play Store, and you can do it at the Apple Store. So you download the Cvent app, and all the information that you want will be there. And if you don't know how to do it, when you get to Convergence, there's a bunch of people that do. So it'll be fun. It'll be great to have even the gallery guides on it. So there you go. I want to appreciate everybody who has been sponsoring Textiles and Tea through your donations and your memberships. We really do appreciate that. If you, through your donations, you can keep programs going like Textiles and Tea or Careers in Textiles and all these other programs. Spinning and Weaving Week, those all happen through your donations, and we do appreciate it. Also, if you're interested and you want to go to some of the Fiber Trust events, the receptions, early entrance into the fashion show, you can still donate and get those assets. So think about it. If you want to donate, you can go online and donate. You could call us, weavespindye.org. If you've missed an episode, you can watch it. You can go to Facebook Live. You can go to YouTube. We upload those to YouTube, and you should subscribe, because when you subscribe, it will say to you that another one's been uploaded. So you can just keep track of them that way. Next week, we have Yoshiko Wada. I am so excited about her being on the show. It'll be interesting because we're going to be in Wichita to do that. So we'll see what happens there. Thank you all so much. Have a great week. We're excited about Convergence. Start figuring out what you're going to pack, what you're going to take, and we will see you there next week. Have a good week. Happy tea.